everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Round Robin. I am your host, Tracy Preston, and with me is Christine Mulligan, Nina Mulligan, Regina Lindsay, Angela Sinclair, and of course, my husband, Todd Preston. Hey, everyone.
Hey, hi y'all.
Hello. Hi.
What's up?
So, in just 3 more weeks, we will be wrapping up season 3, which is kind of hard to believe. We ended season 2 with a 3-part series of the Robeson family massacre in Goodhart. So we will be discussing a couple of topics, then end the season with the Robesons. So with that being said, today we will be discussing something that is very relevant and a subject that is a hot button for most: gun violence. It is an epidemic in the United States of America. We have had more than our fair share of mass shootings, school shootings, and spree shootings. I will say that I am personally so tired. It's the same old story, but in a different location. I am so sick and tired of being heartbroken and angry. I think we all are. But we must keep pushing. We must keep talking so that hopefully one day we can climb out of the cesspit that America is in with gun violence and the mental health impact it has on all of us, and for me especially, the impact it has on children. I'm going to lead off the conversation today with reading an article from Child Welfare League of America titled "The Impact of Gun Violence on Children, Families, and Communities," written by Julie Collins and Emily Swovland. Over the past few years, gun violence has risen to the forefront of public consciousness. Much of the debate has focused on gun regulation and keeping deadly weapons out of the hands of potential killers, particularly those with mental illnesses. Unfortunately, far less attention has been dedicated to the impact of gun violence on victims. While individuals killed and injured in atrocities such as the Sandy Hook and Aurora theater shootings are publicly remembered and mourned, victims of these tragedies are not limited to those men, women, and children killed, injured, or present during these horrific events. The consequences of gun violence are more pervasive and affect entire communities, families, and children. With more than 25% of children witnessing an act of violence in their homes, schools, or community over the past year, and more than 5% witnessing a shooting, it becomes not just an issue of gun regulation, but also of addressing the impact on those who have been traumatized by such violence. Although mental health problems are part of the debate about gun regulation, the discussion has focused primarily on mental health of the perpetrators of gun crimes. In fact, most people with mental illnesses are not violent. And are actually more likely to be victimized than they are to victimize others. While much more can be done to address the problems of perpetrators with a mental illness, that conversation alone will not address the problems associated with gun violence. The Child Welfare League of America, CWLA, believes it is time to broaden the focus of the gun debate to include the social, emotional, physical, and mental health impact of those traumatized by gun violence, especially children and youth. In the 2002 article, quote, "Mitigating the Effects of Gun Violence on Children and Youth," James Garbarino and his colleagues pointed out that children exposed to gun violence may experience negative, short, and long-term psychological effects, including anger, withdrawal, post-traumatic stress, and desensitization to violence. They also indicate that research shows that certain children may be at higher risk for negative outcomes if they are exposed to gun violence. The groups they identified include children injured in gun violence, those who witness violent acts at close proximity, those exposed to high levels of violence in their communities or schools, and those exposed to violent media. Addressing the social, emotional, and physical well-being and mental health needs of children and youth exposed to gun violence is a complex process that requires proper identification of those exposed. It also requires a sufficient number of providers trained in age-appropriate, evidence-based, and trauma-informed treatments to concurrently understand all of the concerns. In addition, it requires our society to find ways to reduce the actual numbers of children and youth who are initially exposed to gun violence. This is no easy task. Given the many settings in our world that contain violent situations or imagery, schools, homes, communities, and the media. Now, the CWLA held a conference and talking sessions to work at micro levels. So the community culture is conference participants also voice concerns about the pervasive culture of fear and violence that exists in many of the communities they serve. At the community level, participants observed that guns are often used in response to fear. They pointed out that children and youth living in violent neighborhoods feel at risk. Without nonviolent conflict resolution skills, they too readily depend on guns to solve problems. Garbarino and his colleagues likewise stated that exposure to gun violence also can desensitize youth to the effects of violence and increase the likelihood that they will use violence as a means of resolving problems or expressing emotions. Often, it is only through carrying and using weapons that these youth feel safe, secure, and protected. But despite gun ownership, many children and youth remain unprotected from the violence within their communities. Participants noted that fighting a community's culture is an uphill battle that is netting few positive results. All agreed that when communities, families, children, and youth are empowered to work together and challenge negative values, they can begin to change the culture of violence and reduce community-wide fear. The effects on child development. The consequences of exposure to violence on child development are very real. CWLA's National Blueprint points out that children and youth exposed to chronic trauma can experience inhibited brain development, producing a lasting impact on life outcomes. Likely as a result of such exposure, participants noted numerous skill deficits among the children and youth they serve who live in the neighborhoods that have high rates of poverty and crime. As suggested by the research, many children experience problems with violence and aggression because they lack nonviolent conflict resolution skills. Much of this violence and aggression is further exacerbated by emotional overload from exposure to violence. Children and youth exposed to violence experience significant stress and often struggle to identify and regulate their emotions. As a result of developmental impacts from their frequent exposure to trauma, their emotions are often internalized and can later erupt in aggression and violence. The listening session attendees also acknowledged that these skill deficits can be the result of children and youth learning behavior through observing and mimicking the actions of those around them. When adults exhibit aggressive and violent behavior, such behavior is often interpreted as appropriate and acceptable. A cycle of violence starts when children and youth observe and embrace negative adult behaviors and, eventually, model such interactions with their own children. With much at stake, a laundry list of strategies and supports are offered to address the impact of child development and reduce the negative impact of exposure to violence. Participants lauded the importance of early family-level prevention, suggesting that parents must be assisted in accessing the social services necessary to strengthen protective factors, build resiliency, help their children regulate their emotions, develop coping skills, and provide physical and psychological safety. Participants also identified numerous skills that must be taught directly to children and youth affected by violence to reduce the impact of traumatic stress, including conflict resolution skills that demonstrate simple problem-solving techniques that are nonviolent and or force aversive. In addition to developing communication skills, children and youth need to be taught to identify and regulate their emotions. Once they better understand their emotions and how they affect their behavior, they can learn how to appropriately respond to their feelings in ways that are not harmful to themselves or others.
Okay, Trace, I'm sorry. I don't know how much more you're going to go, but I really feel like I need to stop you right there because I feel like they're starting to put it back on the family and the parents and the children that are involved in this gun violence or any kind of violence of this nature. And they're off stepping or misguiding and lacking in ownership as a society as a whole. Like, we need to do more concrete things. I know we don't want to get too deep in any kind of political stance on whatever, because I really don't know what policies are out there, what policies are being proposed. I'm not that political, to be honest. So I don't even know enough about that to speak about it, even quasi-intelligent. So there you have it. The point is that as a society, we need to step up and come together and figure out WTF. And not just throw some more crap at how we have to think it through as parents further, or as children we have to automatically up our game and coping mechanisms. Yes, of course, everyone has to up their game and coping mechanisms, but that's the freaking point of growing up. That's aging. That's maturing. That's where the coping skills come in. So what are we doing to allow our children to mature to a place where they can develop coping mechanisms and coping skills instead of just yelling at them to do it faster and do it quicker? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm going too deep in what you were just saying, but I kind of felt like that was just pushing it off. The blame of it all, or the ownership. I don't know. What's the word I'm searching for there?
Well, I think maybe what you're saying is the cart before the horse. We're asking everybody to solve an issue that shouldn't need to be solved, because if we just took the violence out of it, there would be no need for us to write 500-page theses on the psychology of how to unrewind a child's brain from gun violence.
Yeah.
It just seems superfluous. So why don't we just start it from the beginning, and we just make it a safer place so that our children can grow up without having to worry about how to circumnavigate childhood trauma because they were almost shot up at their school while they were attending kindergarten.
Agreed. And yes, Regina, accountability was the word I was searching for. Thank you.
So before we get too deep into why this happens and what the effect is on the kids, let me just share a few statistics with everybody. This is an article I found on CNN, and it says children and teens are more likely to die by guns than anything else. And as you recall, probably Tracy and Christine, like being nurses, it used to be accidental death was the leading cause of death and injury, like death due to accidents. So this article goes on to say that guns continue being the leading cause of death for U.S. children and teens since surpassing car accidents in 2020. Firearms accounted for 18% of childhood deaths ages 1 to 18 in 2022, which is the most recent year that data is available that's complete. About 3,500 children die in gun-related incidents that year, and that's about 5 children for every 100,000 children in the United States. In no other comparable country are firearms within the top 4 causes of mortality among children, according to the KFF analysis. The shooting at Appalachia High School in Georgia was the 45th school shooting in 2024. 2 students and 2 teachers were killed. And it's the deadliest school shooting since March of 2023, the massacre at Covenant School in Nashville, Tennessee. And to be honest with you, I don't even remember this one in Nashville, which is sad because it's just so common now. But, you know, just for a little perspective, I mean, it's ridiculous that kids even have to worry about this.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed. And I wonder, Christine, if, this article is a result of we're not getting anywhere with Congress. We are not getting anywhere with Congress with the gun regulation in this country. It's making money, and again, I don't want to go too political, but it's like, okay, we're not getting anywhere. So, families, this is what we need to do. You know what I'm saying? Because we're not getting any better, and I don't know when it's ever going to change. And I agree with you, Regina. I don't even remember hearing about that either. I don't
Yeah,
remember
and I
hearing
mean,
about it.
okay, I grew up in a family that was very pro gun, is very pro gun. Nothing's changed. I mean, I live in Texas. I learned to shoot at a very, very young age. And there were always firearms around my house. And this was before most people had trigger locks. I mean, obviously, your parents put them away various, places or had the safety on. But gun control, it was a joke in my family. Gun control is hitting your target the first time. So, with that perspective being said, there were never any gun related accidents in my family. There were never any accidental shootings, anything like that. My family was very specific, and I was raised very clearly to understand that a firearm and a handgun in particular has only one purpose. Okay, it's to shoot and kill something. And we weren't even allowed, by my grandparents, by my parents, as young children, to point toy guns at each other. I mean, we didn't, we had cap guns that we played with before, obviously, we were old enough to fire an actual gun, but we weren't allowed to point those at one another because we were taught from a very young age that if it looks like a gun, assume it's real, assume that it's loaded. And the only reason that you need to mess with it is if you're trying to kill something. I don't know where society got away from that because, again, it's, you hear it over and over, guns don't kill people, people kill people. And that's true to an extent. It's a lot harder without a gun, just saying. But we've gotten away from the backbone of it, which is the fact that my family and a lot of families like mine emphasized the respect for weapons, the respect for life, and the fact that a gun was not a toy. And it was just how it was. You know what I mean? And I think that we've kind of gotten away from that. The fact that we don't respect each other. We don't respect human life.
Well, I don't know. I think that's the thing. It's respecting human life in all of its forms and respecting each other. My father was Marine, and I grew up with guns early also. And Regina, you and I couldn't have had more opposite childhoods. I grew up in New York. My father was a Marine, always had guns. They were always in a safe. He would take us out shooting. We went to gun ranges, of course, because it was very city-ish around where I lived. But we would go, and whenever we did travel down to our house in Florida, we would go to the gun range there because it was outdoors, and my father used to get a big kick out of that. We weren't allowed to play with toy guns that looked real, though. We were only allowed to play with water guns. I do remember that. But that all aside, I think the bigger issue is respecting life. I think that's where we as a society are going wrong because and even her article spoke to it a little bit about how I don't remember verbatim. Tracy, maybe you can refresh me on. There was a part of your article that said about how kids were modeling after their parents. So basically, they came from shitty parents that were treating them shitty, and then they would take their parents' guns because they were shitty parents. The guns were free and loose, easy peasy to get, and then they were modeling their parents' behavior and going out. But their parents got to that level of behavior because society knocked them down, treated them like crap, whether it was racism or sexism or just classism. We need to get rid of all the isms in our goddamn society is what we need to do. And that's all the isms. Racism, classism, sexism, all of it. And that I think is a bigger issue than even gun control. Because I don't even really know what the hell I mean when I say gun control. Like, yeah, should we make sure that you don't have a mental illness before you can get a gun? Yeah, sure. I think we do that. At least people, pro-gun people, they tell me that we already do that. I don't know if that's true or not, because I don't know. Just being honest, I don't know about the policies.
Depends on where
Already
you
said that.
live and what kind of weapon you're buying and whether you're buying it from a gun dealer or you're buying it at a gun show.
Right, but it's irrelevant because if that father, that is maybe not such a great father, but he's mentally sane, has that gun, his mentally challenged child can easily get that gun and take it over and use it wrongfully. Right?
Right.
Right. Well, and who's to say that the parents that are buying the guns are mentally stable? Right? Like you were saying, the breakdown of the families or the lack of respect for your neighbors. And the other thing is that it's a sense of power, right? So when you have someone who is maybe that quiet person sitting in the back of the room, or the person who never feels heard, or, someone who is perceived as, a nerd or this or that, when they brandish a gun, they have power. Now all of a sudden they are control. Not only can they kill you, but it's instilling pure fear and terror that is scaring these people and scarring them for life. Just like the Ethan Crumley story that we did.
Right.
Those girls with their testimonies, and because and Regina, you brought that up in the past about the college in Texas, the shooter from the tower. Everybody knows his name. Nobody knows the people that he killed. They don't remember them.
Disgusting.
It's right. And it's just...
Remember, though, your article said that most mass shooters or spree shooters don't have any, air quotes, mental illness, like meaning they don't meet any of the criteria, hadn't been diagnosed prior to the incident. So background checks go so far. Part of the problem, too, is maybe regulation on, there's not a limit on the amount of ammunition that you can buy. And so there was a shooting here in Texas. I don't remember when it was, but this person had gone to Academy and bought like 1,000 rounds of ammunition.
Yeah, there should be a
cap. There's no oversight for that. It's A-okay. You can go there and clean them completely out.
There should be a registry, kind of like what docs have to do when they write a narcotics script anymore. They have to get on their state's database and say, oh, this person just got narcotics from this doctor over here last week. I'm sorry, I can't write you any prescriptions this week, sir or ma'am. You know what I mean? Why isn't there? How about something like that get put in place?
You have to show more ID to buy more than... You can't buy more than one box of Sudafed. Just saying. You've got to show more ID for that than to get a gun.
Yeah.
Just, think about it.
In order for me to get... What is that thing we take for our colds, Christine? Mucinex?
Claritin D.
No.
Mucinex.
Mucinex, DM. I got to go to the freaking pharmacist. I can't get that from the shelf.
But you can go buy all the ammo you'd like.
Yeah. What'd you say?
I said now we're advertising for Mucinex DM.
Product placement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all about it. Cha-ching, let's go.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Regina?
I keep remembering, too, again, being from Texas, in high school, every pickup truck in the parking lot at school had a gun rack in it. Almost all of them had a deer rifle and or a shotgun hanging in the back window.
Kind of like how our hometown was, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It never occurred to anyone that someone would go and bring one of those into the school and harm somebody. That was on school property in the parking lot.
Right, so
and it just was never a thought.
Right, so that kind of bodes more with what I'm saying is maybe we're focusing on the wrong shit. Maybe it's not about more gun control because we didn't have gun control back then.
Right.
If you guys were going to school and everybody had rifles on the back of their truck windows, for Christ's sakes. Maybe it really is about the family values. Maybe it really is about checking in on your neighbors. Maybe it really is about knowing who the hell your neighbors are and knowing what the fuck is going on in their houses. I know that sounds intrusive, and I don't mean it in an intrusive way. I mean it in a caring way. I mean it in a stop judging everybody and come at things with curiosity before you start pointing fingers and ostracizing members of the community. Because I honestly believe that's why this happens, is that kids are lost in the shuffle, or people that do these kind of things, they're lost in the shuffle, and they're left to their own devices. And when somebody is in a lonely, dark place, lonely, dark shit's going to happen.
Well, on that note, I wanted to talk about connection, not necessarily a cause, but if you think about it, when social media started and how long that's been going on, and we have we've degressed as far as how we treat other people because of social media. We put less value in other people's lives, and we can see it every day. How you treat people, you see all the hate. You don't know this person, and you're ripping them apart on social media. You wouldn't do that out in the real world, well, maybe some people would. but you know what I'm saying? And the kids see this behavior. They're seeing it on the social media. They're seeing it at home too. Think about these kids that are living in this environment where they have parents that are nasty and just speaking nasty about other people. It changes the whole culture of how we were growing up. It's a different world. And that's why you see the elevations in this kind of thing happening and not stopping, because our environment has changed.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah, because
and I think social media for sure, when you think about it from that perspective of, let's say, a child that's being bullied at school, when we were in school, you may have been bullied at school, you may have been bullied on the school bus, but when you got home, your bully wasn't there on your phone.
Yeah.
True.
Where it was in your face all the time. There is no respite from that when it starts to happen to a child.
Yeah, it's absolutely relentless right now.
Mm-hmm.
And has been for years, right? So before the gun violence got really bad, it was the bullying that was just so horrible that kids were killing themselves because
look
of
at
it.
that one girl that just killed herself, and the 3 girls that pretty much bullied her into doing it made social media posts telling her to kill herself, telling her to hang herself, telling her what a piece of shit she was and how gross and disgusting she was. And they still have not arrested these girls. They have not arrested them. They have not brought any charges upon them. And they have all of this evidence that they did actually instigate this bullying, and it was brought up. But because these girls have parents on the PTA or someone's dad's in the school board or blah, 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 it's the same old, same old. So until we change, because honestly, I don't think it's the kids that are the problem. It's the adults.
Yeah.
Until we change us or we die off, one or the other, change can't happen.
It's a complete breakdown of the family structure and respect that we used to be taught.
Supporting each other.
Mm-hmm.
We don't support each
I
other
don't know
anymore.
that it's...
We focus on our differences instead of focusing that we all bleed red.
Right.
Well, and I don't think it's necessarily the family as much as it is society, right? Again, to Todd's point, and everybody else is about social media, or we do say things to people that we would have just kept to ourselves in the past. If you were face to face with somebody, would you honestly say that? But also, I think when you're talking about these girls, and I get it, the bullying was horrible, and the consequences of it were, unimaginable. But I also think we have to keep in mind that, as we've said 100,000 times on the show, teenagers don't have fully developed brains. They don't understand the consequences of that bullying. And I think if all of us who are adults are honest, at one point or another in our lives growing up, we were either bullied or were bullies. So again, I don't know that it's, yes, the girls should be accountable for their behavior that led to this. However, we also have to keep in mind the mitigating circumstance that they never imagined that would really happen.
It's like our parents, like how we all kind of cringe. No matter what race you are, your parents will say some stupid shit about other races. and we're all like, ugh. You know what I've discovered is that our generation, I'm going to be 50 soon, so My kids cringe at sometimes, and I'm not that bad at it. But we're so ingrained and we're so indoctrinated. Our generation, our ism is classism. We show it in the way we've strived to more, bigger house, nicer car, whatever, and we've spoiled our children with all the royalties of having parents that are, steady middle class. They have all the games, all the video games, all the computers, the nice sneakers, the nice cars when they get out of school. That crap is ridiculous. So our generation, our problem is classism. So I'm hoping the next generation does away with some of these isms. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think that was some of the, going back to the article, like there also, and there was stuff that I just didn't get to, but it is teaching the younger kids. Just like we had talked about, there was I don't remember what season it was, what episode it was, but we were talking about bullying again. Like it's like they've been stomping it out. They start with kindergarten, teaching that it's not good. It's going back to the values that we've been losing, that everything we just talked about.
The bullying kind of stems from what you were saying in that article. Mm-hmm. They're mirroring it from their parents. Mm-hmm. So that's what they're bullying other kids for.
Bullyism.
Another ism.
See what I'm saying?
Well, I do think that the girls ended up posting videos even after this girl's death, plotting the fact that she actually went through with it. So I think at some point we need to make some examples of some people. I think that the internet has made it very easy for people to say the things that they wouldn't normally say, because back in the day, and my mom's favorite thing was, be careful who you mouth off to. Someone's going to turn around and stab you one day. And that did instill a little bit of fear, and it popped off regardless. But I had a few run-ins with people who wanted to kick my ass after school. But I am glad that they're starting to hold parents accountable, because the newest one with what was his, Colt Gray, whatever his name was, I don't even know. His father was actually brought up on charges the exact same day.
That is refreshing to see that start to happen.
Which is, I think, a great step in the right direction. Yeah. And just because kids are kids, I get it. Look, I'm sympathetic too. Kids make mistakes and you want to give them second chances. But I think at some point we have to start punishing them. I think we need to start punishing them.
Punishing
because
the parents.
They're the bullies and parents.
Yeah.
The keyboard courage.
Agreed.
You gotta start penalizing that.
Yeah,
because
maybe they don't lose their whole life. Maybe they don't go to jail, but maybe they do a community service until they're 18 years old. They can't get around it.
Well, or better, maybe some counseling.
Yeah.
That would have to be a part of it. Sure. Yeah. Because I don't understand how you as a parent can wrap your mind around the fact that you have video evidence of your child encouraging other people to kill themselves and end their lives, and you and your friends on a daily, constant basis posting to stories, posting to Facebook, posting on Instagram, doing Snapchats, which, I think it was Regina that said something about you could go home and be safe. Now it takes 5 seconds for the whole school to see a doctored video of you doing something that isn't you. And now your entire life is ruined. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think that there has to be. We can't just keep going, we're their kids. And, when you're in high school, you're not a kid anymore. Are you a kid legally? Yes. But are you mentally capable of making better decisions? Absolutely. And hey, you know what? If you aren't, then your consequences, whatever that consequence is.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's not until the 20s that the brain is fully formed.
So we just don't punish people?
No.
They're not fully formed yet?
No, there should be accountability. It's just the question is how much. I agree with you. Community service, being forced into, counseling of some kind.
Maybe
Absolutely.
You make them volunteer at the suicide hotline. Prevention hotline or something. I mean, there has got to be something that we can do to push these kids, because the internet's not going anywhere, and neither is social media. So we can't shield our kids from it like as if it doesn't exist. because computers are forever more going to be a part of our lives, if not more part of our lives as time goes on.
Unless the apocalypse happens. Apocalypse time.
I fully agree. And it is a generational thing. Like, our generation, we had that respect. We respected our weapons because they took a life. And we had to understand that that is what happened when we picked that weapon up, right? So for some reason, and I agree with like Todd and Regina and everybody, at some point it changed. And now our children are being bullied. They can't get away from it, like you guys were saying. You know, it's like, it's a horrible, horrible cycle, and something has to change. We have to start being kinder to one another and being respectful of other people's feelings, their thoughts, because right now nobody respects anybody. Like, I see it day in and day out. And the really sad thing is even my grandson, my 4-year-old grandson, who is in preschool, he has been bullied. Like, it, it pisses me off. We have to teach our children to be better people. We as parents have that responsibility to teach our children to be upstanding citizens, and we are failing as a society, and I don't know how to fix it. I really don't. But I agree with what everybody has said.
Yeah, I feel like the number of families who are still holding values and respect is dwindling. Younger parents, single parents. I mean, heck, I was just, helping take care of my mom, and Dr. Phil was on, and you have women screaming at their toddlers, I'm gonna beat you, go eat, go do this, raising their hands to the child. And I'm talking like the age of your grandson, right? So they're coming from homes like that more and more and more. Or at least it's just being exposed more. I couldn't even watch it. I'm like, Mom, turn that channel, because I'm about to split right through my skin and attack somebody, because I can't handle it. So, it's a degradation of, and why are they doing that? Was that the way they were raised?
You just made me think of something, Trace, when you said that. And it is true. And we've all done it too. And there's a video or a meme or whatever you want to call it going around that I've seen it a couple times. Kids don't listen to you when you ask them nicely. Toddlers all the way up to teenagers. You have to say, like there's one video flying around there. I've seen it a million times over the past year probably, where there's a mom, she tells her teenage son, it's hot on the bottom. Here, take this to the table. It's hot on the bottom. And he keeps trying to grab the bottom. And she says, it's hot on the bottom. And he goes to grab the bottom of the bowl. And then she says, it's hot on the bottom. And she screams it at him. And then he's like, okay. And then he takes it at the top. Do you know what I mean? So it's not the screaming so much. It's the pressure cooker of society, I think. You know what I mean? When you were just talking about how they were yelling at their toddlers. They're getting to that level of yelling and threatening physical violence because their life is sucking, because they're paying all this for groceries and they're not making any more money. Nobody's getting raises anymore like we used to. We used to all get a little bump in our salaries, and there used to be a bump in inflation. So it was a wash, but we all felt better about it. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff's not happening anymore. And it really is because our society is so focused on capitalism and getting ahead and outdoing the other person, instead of just worrying about yourself, doing what you need to do, getting to a place that makes you happy, and then looking around and seeing what you could do to help everybody else around you. It's the community. It's society needs to get back to being a community. Worry about yourself, fine. Get what you want, fine. Over excess, outdoing someone just to be like, nanny, nanny, boo boo, I got more than you do, that shit's gotta go. Like, it's so
tired.
Yes.
I think we are seeing the death of that, though, especially in the younger generations, the ones that are what do they call them, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, I think now. they're more about experiences and less about material things. So the whole, I think, the whole influencer phase that we see right now, I think will die off with them.
I wish the experience that they want to have is actual work.
Well, I do think they want to work.
Can't be choosers.
I think they want to work. I think they just don't want to work in the same way. And I don't blame them, because I was watching a show actually, and the guy, he was an economics professor, and he was talking about how the need for a 40-hour work week is completely obsolete, you know, and that really, honestly, with the advent of the technology that we have now, if people can get their work done in 4 hours, they should be able to get their work done in 4 hours and go home. It's really not that big of a deal. This time construct that we have doesn't necessarily propel people forward in society, nor does it motivate anybody to get ahead. But if you give people the option of work-life balance, they absolutely will work hard for you, because they know that they can enjoy their time off without being harassed. So there is a kind of balance, I think, that Europe has that we don't have in that structure. Whereas in France, it is against the law for your employer to contact you on any platform after 5 o'clock. And if they do, they get fined $1,200 every time they do it. Every email, every text message. I mean, so it's very important for them over there, whereas it's not very important for them. And how do you expect parents to raise their kids?
Maybe that's a connection too.
I was just going to say,
look at all the other countries around us, and they don't have the gun violence that we do.
Shocker. Because they don't have
they're
guns.
not in the pressure cooker.
Well, they're not.
No, but yes, they're not allowed.
But they don't have the pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. They're not allowed guns. Agreed. However, maybe, you know, like, maybe that's actually the thing. We come full circle in our little round robin again. Yeah. Is that, yes, we have this epidemic with gun violence because we have this epidemic with greed and not being a community anymore. Mm-hmm. Where other nations, European nations, Switzerland, or, you know, the Scandinavian nations, they all are very work-life balance. Mm-hmm. They're all about mandatory holidays, or AKA we call it vacations.
Do you know what I mean? They equal the load out too. Everybody gets to work. Everybody gets to work.
They pay grandparents to watch children, so it incentivizes children, but they also pay for daycare if that isn't an option for you as a family. I mean, there are so many benefits to living over there, you know, where the daily stress of needing to make this certain amount of money just to survive, with that weight lifted off of you, I think it's exponential what you could do at that point.
Yeah, and I just thought of this conversation that I want to share with you guys too, is that I was traveling for work a couple of weeks ago, and the physician that was the medical director there, he's from Nigeria. No, damn it. The point of the story is this. I was telling him about the True Crime podcast, and so then he was like, oh, really? And then I said, well, what do you think? Why do you think people do commit these crimes? And he's like, I don't know, because I'll tell you, when I was growing up, that he took for an example in the market, the flea market, whatever they call it, in the market where they're selling stuff, right? Some young teenager came by and stole something, and I thought, oh dear God, he's going to tell me they cut his hand off. They're all chasing him down. This is how they grow up. They're all chasing him down. They get him down, threw a bunch of tires on him, and set his ass on fire.
What? Wow.
Yes. And he's like, and that's how we grew up. That's what happens. We don't lock our doors. We have dogs. Our dogs are there to attack and protect. But that's how they grew up. He's like, Tracy, I don't have a single violent bone in my body. And that's how I grew up there, and everybody grew up there.
So consequences.
Right, but think about what they probably have that we don't have is huge social media, and it's still a very tight network of family.
Yeah.
Community.
Yeah.
Community,
and no
tires.
Give a fuck. Examples all the way.
Oh, I'd rather get my hand chopped off.
That is fuck around and find out quick. Fuck around and find out real quick.
Right? So why is that? But it comes down to the basic building blocks.
You better not fuck around, because look at the pile of tires I got sitting over there.
Did you see? I just bought 100 tires.
Jesus.
But also think about the fact that, let's say you've got a household with 2 children in it, right? And they grew up with a very abusive, very alcoholic parent or parents. You know, those 2 kids being exposed to the exact same situation at home, you know, one of them would probably grow up to be an addict, and one would grow up to say, I will never ever drink ever, or I will. For example, I had a family member who grew up in a very abusive household, and when she found out that she was pregnant with her first child, she was just terrified of being an abuser like that. So she started going to counseling prior to, so exposure at home, yes, that definitely is formative. But I think we should go back to what Tracy said about 100 times too, is that schools should have mental health type classes to help kids learn how to regulate their emotions and how to express themselves. Because I feel like, again, these kids that are being bullied and they go home and there's no escape from it because they've got phones and social media and all of that kind of stuff. They feel like they're not seen. They feel like they're not heard. And this is a last desperate cry for help, albeit the absolute wrong one, but they go to school and shoot the school up.
And what do they do when, let's just say, they're getting bullied at school and then they're getting beat at home on top of it? Or,
Right.
whatever. Their parents are drunks or drug addicts or who knows what. So they're falling apart everywhere.
If they had a tight-knit community behind them, they'd have neighbors that would know what was going on. They'd have neighbors to turn to. They'd have counselors at school that they know they can go to. Right now, we don't have any of that in place because our society is completely fractured from giving a shit about each other.
Well, there's not even
totally
resources.
crumbled.
There's not even resources for that. There's not even resources for regular-ass teachers. Mm-hmm. There's not even resources for them to provide them for lunch most times. So it's, we take our money and we spend it in all of the wrong places, and then we all throw our hands up in the air when these sorts of things go, I don't know how this happened. Well, follow the money. And you'll see why it happened.
Yeah, that's the gross part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do want to...
It's like, I don't know if you guys ever participate, but like in the ER here in Houston, in one of the trauma centers we always did, can't remember what the name of it was, but it was Shattered Lives, that's what it was called. And it was where we would go out to a high school and they did a sort of a mock drunk driving incident. There'd be kids from the drama club or whatever that were in makeup and everything, and they would have this whole, fake car accident and give the scenario that the driver was drinking. And then, all the friends would come with them and the parents would be there crying and screaming. They would bring them to the ER. We went through the whole process with all of these students standing there of actually running a code and seeing their friend not survive, but what it looks like when all of that happens, when you get to the emergency room. And anyway, long way around the world to say that it does have an impact. It did have an impact on teenage drunk driving incidents, just showing them in a very real way in person what the impact is.
Well, I actually did that when I was.
Were you a part of that?
Yeah. I should have got an award.
Didn't they do it at our high school parking lot?
Yeah, that was me. I was the dead one.
You were?
Yeah.
You were Grateful Dead?
I played dead like really good too.
You play a good dead guy. Q sign.
So I've heard.
But I just think that maybe something similar to that could have some impact on this, and maybe if that segued into something about how people end up being pushed to a point where they feel like that's their option.
That's actually a really good idea. Yeah.
To highlight what it feels like to be bullied to that extent.
You'd have to have people on standby, because the people that don't know that it's being staged, might actually jump in. But that's the whole thing. You want to see who reacts. Who's going to step up for this person and save this person from being bullied? But you got to be reactive though, and don't let this person actually. I'm acting. But I mean, it make a real huge impact.
Well, how did they pull that off when we were in school? We were told, because it was mad.
Sad.
Students against.
Yep.
Students against drunk driving.
Yeah. So the city donated a car that was just beat to crap anyways, and had the accident already staged, and then there was an announcement and everybody from the school had to go out and see what's going on. When they get out there and they see, I remember this one girl crying because she thought I was really dead. That was...
I thought you were going to give it a tip to the hat of your acting skills. Yeah.
Ketchup. Lots of ketchup.
Lots of ketchup.
Yep.
Sticky sweet.
Okay. Ew.
From my head to my feet, yeah. Sorry. I had to finish it. My OCD was not going to let that go.
You know, it's totally cool. Totally cool. Wasn't that funny how we went from gun violence to where we ended up with bullying?
Yeah, and well, it all
But it's
makes
all part
sense.
of
I
the
mean, there's a
same
lot
thing.
of facets to it. So, I mean, it certainly connects.
There's a lot of facets to it. And I think we really did a bang-up job about talking about the problem as a whole without having to only talk about the policies of it all.
Right.
I think it was
Yeah.
a great conversation and a different conversation.
Yeah.
And one that
what's been
needs to
out
be
there.
talked about more often.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Tracy's on the bandstand of having counselors in school, and I'm on the bandstand of people just being better. Be better, people.
Yeah.
Be
But I
better.
just do want to circle back because I feel like the thread of what I want is being missed. I don't want counselors. I want it to be a part of the curriculum every year. Like I think Nina was
Coping
saying.
skills?
Well, yeah, but I mean
Social
just
skills.
down to the basics of
Yeah.
values and how to talk to people and how to problem solve. And you just keep stepping it up. It's just a part of your curriculum from K to
And
12.
how to recognize that things that you're judging or things that you're hating are actually a reflection of your own innards. And you need to think about that first before you go pointing your finger.
Mm-hmm. Self-actualization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being more self-aware.
Yeah.
Self-awareness.
And how your actions...
Mindful self-awareness.
Well, when you point
Ripple
the
out.
finger, you got three more pointing back at you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And how to stand up for each other. Stand up for the weak. The strong protects the weak.
Yeah.
Period.
Because we're only as good as our...
Our weakest wink.
Our weakest wink!
Do you have a leaky
We're-
wink?
Sometimes. But that's not this kind of podcast.
And you oohed my sticky sweet ketchup. You got a leaky winky.
Oh, Lord.
Okay. All right. 3, 2, 1. We're only as good as our weakest link.
No, I'm keeping the winky.
Oh, come on.
Leaky wink.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely staying.
It would be easy to integrate
You?
mental health classes into health classes, just a little bit at a time.
Well, I think it's even...
Did y'all ever have to take SAMA when you were... Did any of you ever work in
What?
the
Salmonella.
Sama.
SAMA?
Sama.
No.
Like
SAMA was a class that when, in particular, working in a trauma center, it was one of those things that we were required to take, and it was about basically nonviolent conflict resolution. Ours focused a lot on dealing with patients that came in, having psychiatric issues, or how emotions running high in the ER. There are sometimes conflicts where family members are irate or whatever, but it was a whole just class on nonviolent conflict resolution. They should do things like that
Absolutely.
in health class.
Well, one thing
Yeah.
I like about Finland is that their kids actually go to school from the kindergarten all the way up with the same teacher. Same teacher, same kids. They get this. So they really do build a community. And the reason why they set it up that way, and it's just freaking brilliant, is because the teacher then gets to know each student. And each student gets to know every other student. And they build a bond that is like a family. So if there is somebody having issues over here with math and the teacher can't get to them today, then this person's going to come in and help, and they get to know each other's families and their likes and dislikes. And I think that makes it harder then for people to become prejudiced or racist or whatever the ism is that, plagues these particular types of groups. And I think the more, maybe we need to focus on team building instead of not that mental health isn't a thing, but in the corporate world, you guys spend a lot of time with each other, falling trust falls and blindfolding and solving problems and shit. I don't know. I've never been in part of the corporate world, So I just hear about these things through other people, but yeah, it seems like it's a super important thing for you guys to work together as a group at work. So why aren't we doing that with kids?
Yeah, teamwork makes the
like
dream
we
work.
used to have the big parachute, you know, and we would all get under it and we make a big dome. Well, that dome didn't happen if we all didn't flip and sit at the same time.
Then we got to be teenagers and smoked underneath it.
Well, no.
That was you and
Our
New
gym
York.
teacher was
Kindergarten.
passing out
Different?
smokes
It's
under there.
different? I'm sorry, that was different. Sorry.
Kind of the same concept.
Christine,
It's team building.
Christine
It
and
is
the
team
hoodlums
building.
just happen
Listen,
to have
if
a
we flip this
parachute.
all up, we can have a puff real quick.
Hey guys, I got this idea from school.
Parachute.
Yeah, because it was like waterproof. We
Yeah,
were
right.
like all into it. Yeah. I don't know where it came from, but we had it on the beach. I don't know who stole it from school, but somebody must have.
You guys teamwork that
I'm gonna have to call some old friends and see where that came from, but because I know it happened.
That's
I'm just saying,
awesome.
team build.
I love
Like,
it.
get these kids involved with each other. Get them understanding that the kid that's slightly different than them, that sits next to them, that doesn't wear the same clothes as them, or eat the same lunch as them, has feelings, is a person, has fears, has joys, has things that make them complex. And maybe if we teach them from a younger perspective to look at them more of a collective instead of just pinpointing things that we are afraid of because it's different than how we understand it, maybe we'll see a better change.
I like it from the ground up. Start with the basics. Get back to the basics, really. Get back to community. Well, you guys, this was a great conversation. I'm so glad we had it. I'm so glad we've got another show to do where we can just kind of spitball on another topic. Because if people just listen to what we said on this show, we're going to fix all this crap.
It's fixed. Okay.
I mean, not to toot
That's
my own
the-
horn,
that's the
but
goal,
toot
anyways.
toot.
None of us have any answers, but hopefully you got one from it.
Well, maybe it's not having all the answers, but bringing up all the questions.
Having the conversation.
Having the
Absolutely.
conversation, which is what we do together, right?
Right.
We just keep evolving, and that's what's great. We need to have more of it. And this is making me grow. I love doing this show with you guys. It definitely has changed my way of thinking. For sure.
Agreed.
You know? So listen, everyone, thank you so much for joining us on this round robin this week. I think it was a great conversation. It's got my mind going in a lot of different directions. So thank you for everyone for coming back and listening. I hope you guys have a great week. And we will see you next week on Malice Monday. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye.